Van is obviously a great coach.
Got to do it with supreme focus, right? With razor sharp focus. Breathe what he's breathing.
But he's a better person.
Biggest thing you gave me was time. You didn't really know me. We were from the same neighborhood and area, but I was with a group of guys that wanted to go to college, wanted to play ball, and you actually gave us that reality that, hey, this could actually happen because we saw somebody that was like us and that we wanted to become.
Only thing that matters is you come out here, play after play after play after play, and that's just play with each other. That's what matters.
Recruiting is about relationships. It's built on trust. It's built on doing the right things, and it's built on your head coaches and your athletic director, their vision. And I think we have two great leaders, both of those positions. So it makes it easy for me to go out and do what I do.
Be aggressive. Let's win. Here we go.
Once again, I'm excited to have another leader in the world of sports on Leaders Lead with Van Malone. Our next guest, Alex Gary, has had a terrific career as an administrator. He has experiences in development and external relations and has held positions in some of the top athletic departments across the country. He took over as athletic director at Western Carolina in May of 2020. But before that, he's had stops at Oregon State, Maryland, Michigan, and UNC Charlotte. Alex, thanks again for coming on. We appreciate you for taking the time to share your wisdom and insight with us.
Thanks for having me, Van. Really appreciate it. Look forward to the conversation.
Oh, man, it'll be great if judged by the guys we've had so far. It's actually been cool. We've had athletic directors. We've had conference commissioners. We've had head coaches. We even had a guy who's about to coordinate in the Super Bowl, grace our podcast.
Very cool.
It's funny when you think about it, but we sometimes find ourselves in places that we never thought we'd be. You know, in my wildest dreams as a student athlete, I never thought that I would have coached at North Dakota State. But I'm curious about your path. Talk to us about your journey from a collegiate athlete to becoming a director of athletics.
Absolutely, Van. Well, you know, I don't think anybody grows up saying they want to be an athletic director, but I'm probably the closest thing to it. Right after I got out of college, took me about a few months or so, and I kind of went to a couple of different athletic directors at some institutions that I was familiar with and asked them about this whole business, and they gave me a little bit of advice. The first piece of advice was go back to school and get a secondary degree, because everybody in intercollegiate athletics, it seems like all ADs, at the time I went and had this conversation, have those secondary degrees. I asked what I should get it in, and one of the individuals said, don't do the sports management degree. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but if you want to run an athletic department one day, you're going to need that business acumen, that experience in compliance and human resources situations, marketing, so on and so forth, budgeting. And so I did that. I went back to the University of North Carolina at Charlotte. As you mentioned, I actually ended up working there after getting my MBA there. The other piece of advice I got was to get into development. Fundraising, as you mentioned before, has kind of been my path to this chair. But what I was told was, you know, at some point as an AD, you're going to have to cast a vision and get people to buy into that vision. And there's no better place, in my opinion, and in that individual's opinion, to do so in development, because every day you're asking people to give you their hard-earned money to achieve a goal that whatever leader at that institution deems is most appropriate. So I rolled my sleeves up, lived at home with the parents for a little bit to save some money while I was in school. And, you know, like you mentioned, started off at UNC Charlotte, was able to help start their first football program there, doing some fundraising and so on and so forth. Got a great opportunity to go to the University of Michigan, which is obviously one of the biggest brands, kind of like your alma mater at Texas, I believe, right? Out there, and just learned a ton about a lot of different things, capital campaigns, leadership. The former AD there was the former CEO at Domino's Pizza. And so he had a lot of really good things to say from a strategic planning perspective. And I pay a lot of close attention to people like that
Yeah.
because I wanted to obviously be in his shoes one day. Moved on to the University of Maryland. Kevin Anderson, wonderful athletic director, gave me a great opportunity there to actually be a leader in that organization, have people that report to me, oversee sports and multiple departments outside of just athletic development. And then got a chance to sit on a senior leadership team at Oregon State University. And just, I can't say enough about the great people there. Worked for a great foundation leader, and also a great athletic director in Scott Barnes. And so, you know, I wasn't there as long as I planned on being there, but I actually went to school at Western Carolina, where I'm the athletic director here. I played baseball here for 3 years, and a buddy of mine who's actually was in my wedding recently, who played basketball here, gave me a call and said, you know, the Western job is open. And so, you know, my heart skipped a beat a little bit because I figured if there was an opportunity that would come maybe a few years before I thought this opportunity would come, it would be this one. And so, long-winded story, but that's how I got to where I am today.
Man, great, fantastic. You mentioned a few names that I've had the opportunity to interact with. Most recently, Kevin Anderson, had the opportunity to visit with him. I want to say 2 weeks ago, and I met him many years ago through a mutual friend. So, yeah, you learn from one of the great ones.
Absolutely.
So, as a player, it's the yell of the crowd, and as a coach, it's seeing that light bulb go off in a player's life on the field or sometimes off the field. Now, for an administrator, what is your game day? Where does your thrill come from?
That's a great question. I've never been asked that question. That's a really good question. I think that my thrill comes from the same place it did when I was a student athlete. And, you know, one of the things I told a group, I talked to a lot of groups associated with the institution here. And one of the things that I told a group recently is that I don't like to lose. I don't think anyone likes to lose. There's a reason we keep score in sports. And so my thrill is to see our student athletes who I know work so hard, our coaches who obviously work so hard, regardless of what level you're at, Division I, II, III, Power 5, Group of 5, FCS, to win championships, to celebrate, to cut down nets. And, you know, we're at a place right now where in terms of men's basketball and football, we have not been to postseason play in a long time. And so what motivates me every single day is to cut down those nets at a Southern Conference tournament and know that our basketball team is going to wherever to play in a regional, knowing that our football team is going to have an opportunity to compete for a national championship as part of an FCS playoff team. And so we've got a long way to go. But what motivates me is those moments. And every day I come to work thinking about how do we get there? And so I feel like a little bit of a student athlete still. Yeah. I feel like a fan to some extent still, but a person that wants to do whatever they can to eventually look those kids in the eyes, look those coaches in the eyes and say, you know what, it was all worth it. Everything that we went through was worth it. All the difficult conversations were worth it. And we finally got there. So that's really where my energy comes from.
Okay. So now you got hired May 1st, the first part of May last year, right in the middle of the pandemic. What was that like? But what did you have to make sure of, the first thing that you wanted to make sure of when you took over?
Yeah, it was crazy. Matter of fact, I'll give you a little bit of a brief kind of couple week window. So I was named athletic director here at Western right at the end of February, about a year ago to the day almost, now that I think about it. And the next weekend, I flew back out to Oregon and came back out here to North Carolina for the Southern Conference men's basketball and women's basketball tournaments. And we got the tournament in. You know, we won a game and lost a game. The next weekend is when the Power Fives had their tournaments, and is when things started to get canceled. Right. And so it was a shocker, right? I mean, you're no longer in a position where you're a senior associate athletic director over development, and your main job is talking to boosters about, you know, it's tough on the kids and hang in there with us and so on and so forth. I mean, it's talking to student athletes and coaches that you don't have a relationship with yet. Right. And telling them, hey, you know what? I know you don't know me, and I know I don't know you, but I feel for you. We're going to be colleagues. We're going to get through this. And so it was a really, really tough situation. I tried to be as visible as I could, be on the phone with coaches that I didn't have a relationship with as much as I could. One of the really challenging pieces, though, was not knowing who at the university to go to. When you're not familiar with a place, I mean, I went to school here 20-something years ago, but when you're not familiar with a place and know the rules around it and who does what and so on and so forth, this is an institutional issue. So it wasn't just knowing who your senior associate and your associate ADs are and what their responsibilities were, but what decisions are the university making. So it was really extremely challenging, but you know, we got back to ground level, and you got a chance to know people really quickly. Instead of, you know, telling people about your families and what hobbies do you like. I mean, we were talking about work and business from day one. So it was a crazy situation. I've been here, I think, 9 months now officially. It feels like about 9 years. Everything that's been going on. But I think that from a staff unity perspective, it actually was beneficial because it allowed me to get a lot closer to my staff and really also identify pretty quickly. This may sound bad, but who you can lean on and who you can depend on, and how people react under times of uncertainty. So while it was really crazy, I think it also had its benefits as well.
And we're actually, that'll be one of my next questions. But, you know, as you talked about, you know, you having to jump in when you did, it's really funny because it made me think back to my experience here at Kansas State, where Coach Kleiman, our head coach, called me in and said, listen, I want to promote you to assistant head coach. And, you know, what that means is I want to partner with you to run this program. And that was pretty cool at the moment. Then all of a sudden, the COVID pandemic hit, and I'm going into meetings where you, as an assistant coach, you want to push the head coach. Yeah, go ahead, buddy. Good luck.
Exactly.
So there was a meeting. That was a big time meeting. I remember this vividly, and I said to him, "Okay, well, go ahead and have a good one." He said, "No, you're coming with me." And so it has been a tremendous learning experience, but challenging for sure. And so, speaking of challenging, 2020, wow, we're out of that place. But politics, racial discussions, name, image, likeness, the transfer portal, which is continuing on. You know, there's definitely been adversities across the spectrum. But how do you think, and you kind of alluded to it a second ago, but how do you think all those things, creating social justice initiatives, the COVID protocols, how do you think those things have made you a better leader for years to come?
Yeah, that's a great question. I guess that, you know, when you're aspiring to be in a leadership position, a head coach, university chancellor or president, an athletic director, whatever the case may be, you read books and you talk to mentors and they tell you about the things you got to do in order to be successful. And I think that all of the challenges, all of the kind of the variety of issues that we've had to deal with over the past year or so, it just really helped me understand why the things that I knew were important, if that makes any sense whatsoever.
Yes.
Because you listen to things and you hear from people, but until you're actually in that seat, you start to really understand why those things are valuable. And so, you know, one of the things, especially around the social justice stuff, especially around a lot of the COVID issues that weren't necessarily on the COVID side that clear. We didn't always have clear answers on what next week was going to look like, quite honestly, at times. It was just being visible. Even though you don't have all the answers, communication is better than silence. And so I think just understanding that a 2-minute phone call to an assistant coach, a 2-minute phone call to the captains on your football team who are thinking about pausing their activities in order to take a stand for social justice, which our football team did. And I felt very fortunate that they felt good enough about the leadership at the institution to involve us and not just say, hey, well, here's what we're going to do, but really look at us as partners. And so being visible, trying to communicate the best I can, the best that I could in many of these situations, but kind of going back to what I said before, until you're in that seat, you really don't know the things that people have told you, the things that you've read, how important those things are. And I think that that's going through those things has really helped me be a better leader.
Yeah, I again, as I listen to you, I think about the experiences here, and one of the things that Coach Kleiman always talks about is the fact that he, as a head coach, understand the importance of being visible. You know, because especially in the times of crisis, and I believe this as well, that in times of crisis, if you go back and think about the country, think about the United States during the Great Depression, and the reason that Franklin Roosevelt is one of the reasons that he's thought of as such a great president in this moment of struggle for our country is because what he did is he gave the country a plan, and he said after, I didn't know if it would work, but I wanted to give a plan. I wanted to make sure that everyone knew this is the road we're traveling. And when you talk about leadership, no one has all the answers, but most people, they just want a plan. Most people just want to know that you're there supporting them, and the visibility, like you said, the communication is big time important, especially for our student athletes and our coaches who are living in a moment that no one's ever lived in, you know, as a society, but then not even as coaches and student athletes.
Absolutely.
So you were one of the first signatories of the Collegiate Coaching Diversity Pledge, which I happen to have an opportunity to be a part of as well. What does this mean to you? And then even as we look at the bigger picture, what do you think something like this means to the NCAA as a whole?
Yeah, it's, I guess the first thing I'd say is I'd really like to commend the group that put this whole thing together. I think that so many times well-intentioned people have a rough time getting things like this off the ground because they don't get the appropriate support. This group did its due diligence. They had a really good board with folks that have a little bit of cachet, like Arnie Duncan and Lynn Elmore, I believe, is on that board, and Charlotte Westerhouse, former NCAA executive, I'm not sure what, and some other folks. So, you know, I also think that starting with the three sports makes a lot of sense instead of trying to stretch yourself too thin, men's, women's basketball, and football. If I had women's lacrosse, it'd be really tough for me to have a diverse pool of candidates maybe for that sport. So I think that they focused in on a really good starting spot. But in terms of its impact, I really do think that we'll see more diverse hires in the NCAA because of this, because people will get a chance now to state their case. And I think that I don't want to say the only thing that we can ask for is a chance, but I would say that the only thing that we can ask for is a fair chance and an opportunity, an objective chance, an objective opportunity to be able to show that we can do a job just like anybody else can do a job. You know, one of the things my mother told me is that you always have to be twice as good to get a chance. She said that to me since I was a little boy. So in my opinion, the Collegiate Coaching Diversity Pledge is a great step. I think it'll be very successful, and I was very happy to be an early adopter.
And I've said it, you know, to many guests on this podcast before, that there's strength in diversity. And, you know, as a society, we're in a place where, you know, we have to really be honest with ourselves, you know, and I was reading a book, and it talked about diversity and the challenges that come with that. Speaking of, I'm a big time leadership book guy, so we're going to have to connect on that.
Absolutely.
But I was reading a book, and it talked about the fact that diversity, and you take it and put it in diversity hiring in college, and you got to know that that's a nice thing to talk about. You know, it's like that shirt that sweater that we got for Christmas. It's a nice sweater, but it always hangs in the closet. Nobody wants to wear it. You know what I mean? You want somebody else to wear it. Nobody really wants to wear it. And it's cool that I'm having an opportunity to talk to you, because money drives it. You know, money drives it. There's a portion of it that is driven by money, because it's been said that, well, the donors, they only want to they only support this kind of coach or that kind of coach. Well, I kind of believe that, you know what, there's some donors out there who are diverse in their thought, right? And we have to find those type donors and commit to that. If your athletic department is driven by people who don't have diverse thought, go find some people who have diverse thought. They are out there, right? There are people that give millions of dollars to HBCUs. There's people that give a whole lot of money in ways that will let you know that they support diversity.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
So we all have had some awesome leaders in our lives, and on this podcast, we've had some great leaders, and they've talked about their strategies and things, philosophies that they've gotten from people who have imparted great wisdom in their lives. And so what I would ask you is, who in your life has been the best leader that you've been around? And what are some of the things that they taught you?
Yeah. You know, you mentioned in terms of leaders, I guess the first thing I think about is a personal leader would be, and this is just an honest answer, I think my dad's the best person in the world. My dad he's a special guy. He's a gentle giant. There's no person in the world I admire more. I think that the stability that he's shown from my family and I has just been tremendous. His thoughtfulness. He's a guy that would do anything for anybody at any time. And so I've learned so much from my dad. He has these long, drawn out, long-winded conversations with me sometimes, that over the years I've become more patient, because I've been able to really hear some of the wisdom that's coming from him. But so I guess that's my first answer. But I guess professionally, it's really one of my best friends in life now. It didn't start out that way. It started out as colleagues. I actually started out admiring this gentleman when he was a young athletic director about 20 or so years ago. His name's Damon Evans. He's the director of athletics currently at the University of Maryland. And in terms of leadership, I guess I would describe his leaderships. I don't really want to say a style, so to speak. So I guess I'll just describe it. I think he's one of those people that makes everyone that he comes in contact with feel important. And I think that goes a very long way. Anybody that knows Damon, he's extremely charismatic. He has the ability to get people to buy into his vision. He's highly relatable, all of those sorts of things. And so, you know, he's done a great job leading the Terps. He's had a phenomenal career in our business, and you know, he's also one of the groomsmen in my wedding, and so we've become personal friends as well. But those that, you know, personally, my father, and professionally, Damon has taught me certainly a lot for this business.
I've had the opportunity to meet Damon, and I agree. In just a short time meeting him, being around him, I would say those same things. And then, of course, have known other people who have known him. So I would agree that is exactly how I would describe him as well. And then you talked about your dad being a great leader in your life, and I think that I would choose my dad as one of those people as well. The thing that is kind of disappointing is that I hear you say that, you know, when you listen to your dad's stories, they were long and drawn out. And that's kind of the stuff that my kids say to me. The kids are like, oh, they're like, so my oldest son, like when you go into your deal, you know, and I have those leadership lessons. I have a 3-minute leadership seminar, and then I have a 15-minute, and then I have a 45-minute. So when I go into those 45-minute seminars, he starts like doing like he's cracking his neck. so that's his clue to say, okay,
they'll learn to continue to appreciate those things over time.
That was encouraging. You said
Absolutely.
that over the course of time, you have grown patience, to be able to deal with that. Maybe what I'll get them to do, they'll be like, just give me the 3 minute, not the 45 minutes. So I know you've had the opportunity to hire new coaches or hire new staff members. And I always, coming from my leadership readings, I always look at that because I think it's a great analogy to look at that as putting the people on your bus. And so when you talk about putting the people on your bus, how do you go about identifying and understanding, choosing the best addition for your bus?
So I think that I guess when you think about a coach on the coach side, and I think I got a little bit of a different answer, but a relatable answer on the staff side. Here at Western, we're not in the FBS. We don't have a significant budget, and so I think coaches that understand where we are and what the expectations are, which is not always a thing to get on board with, because where we are as a low budget school may not meet an expectation of winning championships. And so there's a very special person that's a really good fit here. I think people that are really into doing the work and bringing an energy and an attitude of winning every single day and don't have excuses. I like to work with our coaches on plans for success. And, if they're the plan that they have, and I ask this obviously a question in interviews too, if we can fit resources with the plan that they have to be successful, then I think we can do something special. But I think we have to agree on what that is. And so I think that, at our institution in particular, it's not for everybody, but it's for people that understand that, look, it's not a place to make excuses, but I'm still expected to compete for championships. I think on the staff side, I look for people that are just highly relational. We spend so much time in intercollegiate athletics around people. I think it's really good to be around people that get along with other people. And so I know that kind of sounds weird, but it's really, I think that if you have people that are highly relational, you can get a lot of things done. That kind of reciprocal attitude of, all buying into the same mission of growing our young people and winning championships is kind of how I look at things. And that's one of the questions I ask a lot when I'm checking references. Is this a person that you want to go grab a beverage with, or is this a person you only want to see between 9 to 5? And so it's maybe a little bit of a different answer. I'm one of those people that thinks that you can take someone that has a really good work ethic and is really relational and put them in a lot of different positions to be successful. There's a lot of things that they can do on your team to be successful. But the relational part of things is just so important. It's right at the top of my list of things that I look for. And again, just going back, I think the one slight difference from a coaching perspective is that if you understand that you're not going to have the highest budget in the league, but you're going to be expected to produce in the top 3 of the league with a chance to go to postseason play, if I can listen to your plan and I can fit the resources, whether that's through the resources we receive from student fees or the institution or money that we have to fundraise, and we can make that work. But it's not a place that's for everybody. And so I think the answer to that question on the coach side really is dependent upon where you are. And at the institution that I'm at now, those are a couple of things that I look for.
Yeah, and I think those are big time important when because there are coaches who have been at some of those places that you're not, right, in terms of finances. And the expectation is the same, but understanding what you're working with, I think it makes everybody's job easier. And again, we go back to these books, The Energy Bus by John Gordon. And what I learned from that book is that you talked about the staff, but I feel like this as a coach, this is a relationship business. Because even in a situation that you talked about, hey, listen, the resources are not the same as one place or another, but a coach has to say, all right, this is what I have. Well, let me work with it, right? But as you have relationships, as you develop relationships in recruiting, as you develop relationships on the campus, and this is where I look at it as a coach, then you get more out of, you get more than you thought you would get, right? My assistant coaches, they're gonna work a little harder, even though I'm not paying them as much, because I'm gonna tell them thank you. You know what I mean? Now, when you're paying them $1 million a year, you don't have to say thank you. You know what I mean? You don't have to talk to them. But when they're getting, when their salary is not the same, then you got to make sure that you show them that you appreciate them, that you do things. And so to me, I really feel like that it's relational, like you talked about, and then it's transformational, right?
Yeah.
You got to be in the business as a coach that you're about transforming people. And that goes back to that book, that life-changing book for me. It made me realize that as a coach, I'm here to change the world through sports, change the world, change the lives of the student athletes I deal with, but then the coaches as well, and the people on the staff. I in this experience, we've had opportunity to speak to athletic directors, and what they've said is that, you know what, man, our coaches and their culture of relationship was so strong that it infected the athletic department, and the athletic department's vision changed to match that of the head of the football team.
I've seen it.
And it's about I believe that is about the relationships. When I'm going to be a head coach one of these days, and my program will be driven by relationships. Everybody says that, right? That's on walls all over the country. But it's not until you really dig in and you make sure that the relationships, they go deep, they go player to player, they go coach to player, they go coach to coach, they go coach to staff member, they go coach to student who is not an athlete, they go coach to student athletes in other sports. And again, when you do it, when you do things in a special way, other people, other sports, the whole athletic department grab on and want to be a part of it.
Absolutely.
So,
I think that I want to touch on something from the coach's perspective, just really quickly. I think that for any coaches that may hear this podcast, I think one of the things that I want to clarify is, I'm going to use our league as an example. Let's say you're a basketball coach and your annual budget is $300,000 to run your program, and you know that at the top of the league the budgets are $400,000.
right.
I think that we have to identify coaches, and we look for coaches that look at that and try to find solutions to that gap. And so how can we creatively approach our job in order to meet the needs that we feel like we can meet or we need to meet in order to be successful and compete in the top three, compete for championships? If a coach comes in and the top budget in the league is $400,000 and your budget's $50,000, you probably need to be in a different league. But I guess the other quick thing I would say is that as I think about our place in FCS and coming from 3 different Power 5 institutions before getting here, some of the salary differences are significant when it comes to assistant coaches at the FCS level. And when you get a good coach at a position, let's call it in football, they're going to get taken. We've seen it time and time again, and we can't always meet those. Many times in football, I mean, you're talking about doubling salaries at least.
Right.
And so, one of the things, and this has nothing to do with what I look for in terms of hiring, but I'm just thinking from a leadership perspective, creating experiences for your staff that make making less more manageable. Everybody's going to want to go from $50,000 to $100,000. There's no question about that. But if I can if I can be making 50 now and I'm in a really good situation, I feel like this place is investing in me in terms of what I want to do for my future. If I want to be a head coach, maybe I'm still 10 or 12 years away. Putting together a plan in place where I know that they're investing in me. Maybe I don't take that job just paying me 65 instead of 50. Maybe I stick around thinking I'm going to be here for a little while in order to really think about the long game. Because $15,000 extra dollars is going to be nice. I may be able to afford an apartment that's a couple hundred square feet bigger than mine is now, and maybe a car that gets a little bit less gas mileage.
Right.
But my experience, and so I think as leaders, and I learned this from one of my bosses at the University of Michigan, creating an environment that makes people second guess, or really makes people leaving certainly, but really makes people value the place that they're at. Because if you can do that, and it is not easy to do, then I think that's when I think that's all part of building a really strong culture.
Right.
And I think that all those things work together. So, I don't want to pull coaches in here and say, hey, you got to win championships with nothing at all.
Right.
But I do like to think about coaches that can be creative and want to embrace challenges when they're thinking about the situation that they're getting involved in. So just wanted to throw that in there.
Exactly. It's relationships. You hear the terms quality of life, and when I, as an assistant coach, am in a situation where I'm making a decision for me, and I think for a lot of other coaches as well, it's always what's the what's the long-term vision? What's the long-term vision for my career and for my family? And when you're in a situation, we always say it, with good people, and that there's a plan for your development here, it's got to be a large amount of money, to make a guy jump ship.
Absolutely.
So let's back up. What's one thing that you would tell young Alex Gary that you know now that you wish you would have known back then?
That I wish I would have known. Well, I guess, when I was in graduate school, I did a lot of networking. I was, a matter of fact, I met Damon when I was in graduate school. He doesn't remember this. Years, however many years ago that was. I was a big business card collector. I went and rode a train in New York to work at some sports business journal, intercollegiate athletic thing, where I met Gene Smith and several Miles Brand years ago. Met all those folks, and I reached out to talk to Bernard Muir, who I was actually on a Zoom call with yesterday with some other folks, who was the AD at Georgetown at the time, and I was really into that, And as my career started to continue to move along, and one of the things that I wish I would have known is the importance of staying hungry as it relates to my network and my networking. Because I tell you what, once I got to, let's call it, the University of Maryland, and I was an associate AD, and maybe on my transition to being a senior associate at my next stop, I really stopped having that same hunger for creating and maintaining my network. Because now in this chair, you start to see how important it is when you're wanting to schedule games, or when you're wanting to, try to get your team a nod for the last spot in the field or something like that. So I think that's, I wish I would have known the importance of continuing that. It's not like I can't pick it up, but I feel like where I started in terms of the hunger of expanding that network, linking up with people, bouncing ideas off of, it continued, but not anywhere near the pace where it started. And so I would tell my younger self to not, regardless of what positions you take or where you move up to, how important that is to continue to stay on top of.
That's cool. I encourage young coaches in that same way. A lot of young coaches that I meet, their thought is they want to meet Coach so-and-so because, you know, he has a job. Yeah, man, if I could just get to. And I say, you know, man, it's funny, but that guy that you're trying to get to, he's surrounded by a lot of other people, you know, and if you have relationships with those other people, you could get them. Another book, I'm trying to remember who wrote this book, but it's called The Power of Who.
Oh, yeah.
And man, I can't. Anyway, I know the premise of the book. The book is saying, listen, you're trying to touch that guy. That guy's daughter goes to karate, you know, and as she's at karate, the mom is there with her, and your wife is probably there with the mom at karate, you know. So it's just the relationships that maybe you don't value as much, but you have to understand those relationships are just as important as that guy that you're chasing. Quick story, and I give young coaches this story. So I'm on the AFCA board. Well, the way I got on that board initially is just by being a part of committees within the AFCA. And I call them the worker bee committees. So the worker bee committees, the PDS committee, when you go to the convention, the way you're going to get your money back is the fact that you went to some sessions. So some of those sessions, the professional development sessions, we have to give you a stamp. So I was on that committee when I first started the coaching. And I wanted to be on that committee because before you get a stamp, you got to tell me who you are, where you're from. So I met Division II, Division III, FCS. I met all kinds of coaches. Before you get that stamp, I don't know why I wanted to meet them. I just want to establish relationship, network, right? But when I say network, it's just about establishing relationships. It's not that I want to have a transaction with that person. But you know what? Eventually, maybe we do have a transaction. Eventually, maybe you are at so-and-so university and we play the team that you just played. And so maybe you are able to give me some tidbits on something you got from that game. So it could end up being transactional. Well, as I continued to grow, I moved up. I got out of worker bee committees and I got to the committees where I was able to go on the stage and introduce the big time speakers. Well, before I introduced that big time speaker, I was behind the stage talking to this guy. And you out in the audience, you know this guy has a running back's job. And you're just wishing, man, if I could just get to him. Well, here I am behind the scenes talking to him. Right. So if I was a running back coach, this is my opportunity, you know? Yep. And so absolutely. I always encourage coaches, you know, man, be a part of, you know, go to the clinics, speak at the clinics, write the articles, right? Because you're doing what coaches do, but in doing that, you are setting yourself up to establish relationships, to network, right? Absolutely. And again, it doesn't have to be a transactional relationship, but sometimes it does work out. You know, it does work out that way.
Oh, that's great. Man, that's very good.
Alex, I do appreciate you, man. I appreciate you for being on. Like I said, there's been a lot of coaches and administrators and people who have watched and gotten great advice and insight. And so I appreciate you for being willing to share. And like I said, we're gonna have to connect because I have a great joy for reading leadership books and really understanding that even after this experience, understanding that we're all saying the same things. We're just kind of saying it in a different way. And sometimes the way you say it and the way you believe is just the way I believe. But if I can learn from you, maybe I can share it from someone in the way that they need it at that moment.
Absolutely. Love it. So, I love it. Man, I appreciate you having me on. This has been a lot of fun. I feel like I've learned a lot from you. And as we talked about through some of the Q&A, we definitely got to connect and, continue to make each other better.
For sure.